Welcome to How to Yugioh. Yugioh Winter Season 2024/2025. So let's start with this video. And I just want to say is that on this winter season video that I'm talking about, I want you to take my opinions with a grain of salt here. While yes, these are my opinions, and yes, I do feel they will matter, but sometimes things change, especially in Yu-Gi-Oh! We can never say what is going to be true today might be false tomorrow.
Facts.
Now, with that little warning out of the way, let me explain what I feel will be the future in the winter season for Yu-Gi-Oh! 2024 going to 2025. Yugioh is expected to be the best deck, especially following our OCG results, so we expect it to be the best deck here, along with Malice. So the cards, which we can confidently say, I can confidently say anyway, will be good going forward are Contact C, Flying C, XYZ Encore, and Spellbound. First, let's talk about Contact C. Contact C is gonna be fantastic against Yugioh. Why is that the case? Because Yugioh, all of the cards have this summon activation condition or summon restriction, is that whenever they use their effects, you can only special summon rank 4 XYZ monsters from your extra deck, meaning that you're locked to XYZ summoning for the rest of the turn. So effects such as Contact C and Flying C immediately kill that strategy. And it is true that you would say, but they do have a field spell that negates monster effects. But here's the thing, the only way that field spell can negate monster effects is if you control an XYZ. And so if the opponent cannot XYZ summon, if they do not have an XYZ monster on the field, then they cannot activate the effect of the field spell, and thus rendering that field spell pointless. XYZ Encore is much of the same, as when they have the field spell again only negates monster effects. It doesn't say anything about quick play spells, meaning you can detach those materials, as the effect of the field spell can only negate an effect by detaching material. But if there are no XYZ materials and XYZ monsters, then the effects of negating monster effects with a field spell cannot be activated. And finally, we have Spellbound for Malice. Fantastic card again. Really great card for Malice. Really great card overall for just most XYZ decks, Link decks and things like that. It's great to have just something in the middle there. And I think Spellbound is something we should be looking at in the future for Link decks or any other just the extra deck in the future. Now, with that being said, I think that's all I want to say in this part. So let's go to the next part of this video. Okay, and so in here, I'm going to talk about the breakout star of this season. You guessed it, you heard it right. It's going to be Triple Tactics Thrust. Yeah, you'll be thrusting your opponent to oblivion.
Wait a minute. That can't be right.
Yeah, mandatory sexual reference is input in there. Now, why is Thrust going to be such a fantastic card in this season? First of all, Thrust is a card that I talked about in the previous autumn season of 2024 this year, but let's put Thrust again, and Thrust is looking sexy and sexier than before. With targets such as Black Goat Laughs that looks like it's not going to go out of style, and Simul Archfiends, meaning that we can just negate XYZ or any form of relevant summoning that your opponent activates when they activate Mulcharmies, or you can just turn skip your opponent. The ability to turn skip your opponent cannot be understated here. And the fact that we've just had Rarity Collection Bonanza, Rarity Collection 3, that has made Triple Tactics Thrust accessible for everyone, means that you now have access to this card. Everyone has access to this card. And in fact, as your Yu-Gi-Oh! Sensei, I will say this: it is your duty, it is your imperative to get this card and just forget about the Mulcharmy cards. It is such a no-brainer for you to get Triple Tactics Thrust. It is so easy to activate. It is such an easy win, such easy playing that it just transforms any Yu-Gi-Oh deck to just simple calculations that there's no reason why you don't put thrust into your deck, that you're not thrusting your opponent to oblivion.
What the hell does that even mean?
Yes, you heard that right. You will thrust your opponent to oblivion. And that's really all I've got to say about this point. If we go to the next slide, we can look at some other targets that Thrust has, including Forbidden Apocrypha. Now, Forbidden Apocrypha looks to be a fantastic card again, being able to just send cards. Now, why do I like Forbidden Apocrypha is the fact that we send the relevant cards. Sure, we cannot send, links, but we can't send Fusion, XYZ, or Synchros, okay? We have DDDG, Different Dimension Ground, for just, trap version of DDD Shift, of Dimensional Shifter. And we have Dimensional Barrier. Again, there's just fantastic targets for Triple Tactics Thrust. And I'm going to tell you now, with every seasonal video that I'm going to be making, Thrust is going to be one of those cards that's going to come up again and again and again and again and again and again. Because there's just so many fantastic targets that Thrust has. With Forbidden Apocrypha, I don't think much needs to be said. We can deal with Ryziel, okay? Just straight up the gate, we're sending cards. We can deal with different dimensional grounds, deals with Ryziel as well. Sure, it cannot deal with Malice, but you get the general idea. With similar Archfiends, as you saw previously, that can deal with Malice if they just have one summon. We have Dimensional Barrier, again, that can deal with all forms of extra deck summoning except links. But you get the general idea here. We can just deal with everything. So it's fantastic. We have the Black Goat Laughs, as you saw in the previous slide. And that's a card there that can just deal with specific monsters. A specific monster or a key card in your monster's extra deck that you can just get rid of, or you can just deal something about it. The fact that you can seal a key monster as well, a key monster's effect with Black Goat Laughs and its effect in the graveyard, cannot be understated. There's just a lot of things there and a lot of potential, a lot of ways that things can just go very smoothly. And with that, let's head over to the conclusion. All right then, so let's go to the overall conclusion that I'll summarize in this video. All I want to say is that in this winter season, the breakout star of the season is going to be Triple Tactics Thrust. I mean, many would say it's going to be Malchami, Nyala that comes out in January of next year. Many would say it's going to be other cards. But the card that I feel that is really getting swept under the radar, that really is, no one's really talking about this, is Triple Tactics Thrust. It cannot be understated, and I cannot say this enough, how this card now is accessible to everyone because of Rarity Collection 3 or Rarity Collection Quarter Century Bonanza. The fact that this card is accessible is going to send shockwaves to the TCG. The ability to be able to turn skip your opponent, being able to deal with things, the fact that you do not need, just because of owning Triple Tactics Thrust, you do not need to own the Malchami cards is huge, okay? Absolutely huge. Remember, the more Malchami cards are used in Yu-Gi-Oh!, the stronger Thrust gets, and the higher likelihood that you can activate Thrust. And the one of the very powerful things about Thrust is because you have access to every normal trap or every normal spell in Yu-Gi-Oh! History, including any normal trap or normal spell that comes out from now until the end of time, Thrust gives you the ability to just stop anything that is coming out. With an ever-increasing library of every normal trap being accessible and every normal spell being accessible, with the fact that you can, if you're stopped by a hand trap, have access to all your play starters in your own deck, because your own deck is definitely going to have a key normal spell or normal trap, There's so much utility, so much flexibility. There's so much about Thrust that is fantastic. What's there not to love? And I think this is something that is going to be a breakout card, in my opinion anyway, for 2025. This is a card that we're going to be looking at and I think may hit a ban list 2025. We may see it limited, I think, possibly. Now, would I like this card limited? I don't think so. I think Thrust, in my hot take here, is necessary for the game. I think if we're going to be going to a Yu-Gi-Oh! That is fast-paced, and, you know, we're going to be playing all these one-card combos, Thrust, the reason why I like Thrust so much is that it enables back-and-forth gameplay, right? Yes, there are some toxic cards that it searches, but in my opinion, those toxic cards should be banned and Thrust should remain in the game. Thrust is healthy. It's not a free card. Sure, Mulcharmy cards, people are saying now a bit questionable, but I think those cards are healthy. That's my hot take on Triple Tactics Thrust. And that's my overall take on the state of Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. I feel we're going to be heading to a very interesting format. I feel the format we're going to be entering is going to be extremely fair, extremely balanced, as we're going to be heading to mid-range Yu-Gi-Oh! Ryziel isn't a strong archetype. It doesn't put in loads of negates, as the negate is only coming from the field spell and it's only dependent on you having an XYZ monster. There's very many ways, without the ways I've mentioned in this video, to stop Ryziel. This isn't some kind of deck here that can just be, you know, you can just lose to or you just don't have a chance here, which means the strategy for Yu-Gi-Oh! Going forward, or for decks going forward, is going to be very interesting. We're going to see a lot of mid-range decks, which means a lot of pet decks are going to be entering the competitive scene. It's going to be a free-for-all. And what is going to be the best deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is going to be the best players in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are going to be the ones who know their decks the best. The ones who know their archetypes, decks, or whatever strategy they're playing like the back of their hand. Anyone who can analyze the competitive scene and know the key cards of the competitive scene is going to stand out in this scene. Equally, this is why cards which are stable, right? Cards which have a likelihood of being used often are going to be the most dangerous. And that's where Thrust comes in this debate. Because we're going to be, hand traps are something that we've not really had improvements on, especially in TCG. We've had only Ash Blossom that has been put in every deck. And that's about it. Ash Blossom has been considered the best hand trap of all time. Same thing with Imperm. These are the two cards that have entered our competitive scene in terms of monster effects and trap effects, but we don't see them anymore. But with the introduction of Mulcharmy Parelia and introduction of Mulcharmy Fuelos, and then with the introduction of Mulcharmy Nyala at the beginning of next year, things are going to be much more interesting. Thrust is going to be ever more powerful, and especially is going to be a card I feel we should see more and you should consider in your side deck. It's just a free card, a free way of being able to interact with your opponent, a free way to stomp your opponent, and a free way to just do things that you couldn't do before. And that's all I've got to say for this video.
We come to the end of this video. So, as I like to say, you are one step closer to becoming a Yu-Gi-Oh! Master. My fate, right, is in your hands.